The rope burned into Clara Hayes' wrists as rough hands shoved her onto the tavern floor.
I'll take her.
18
The
years
bidding
old,
stops
and they
now.
were selling her like livestock.
I didn't think we'd
Men
make it this
laughed,
far.
placing bids while she trembled in the dirt.
We just
Then
needed a
one
little
voice
faith.
cut through the chaos, deep
We're
weathered
safe
final.
now.
$75. The room went silent. A gray-haired rancher stepped forward, and Clara's heart seized with terror. She knew what came next. Every girl knew. But when his eyes met hers, something impossible flickered there: mercy. Before we continue Clara's journey, please subscribe to our channel and stay until the end to see how one act of courage changes everything. Comment below with your city so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. The stench hit Clara first. Whiskey, tobacco, and the sour sweat of men who'd been drinking since noon. The Golden Horn Tavern in Dry Gulch, Nebraska wasn't much more than rotting floorboards and broken dreams, but today it was an auction house, and she was the merchandise. "Come on now, gentlemen, fresh stock." "Barkeep." Rusty Kimball's voice rang out like he was selling horses. "Young Strong knows her place." Clara's knees scraped against the splintered wood as two men forced her down. Her dress, if you could call the torn rag a dress, barely covered her bruised shoulders. 3 weeks since her stepfather sold her gambling debts to Kimball. 3 weeks of sleeping in a storage room, eating table scraps, waiting for this moment. The one she'd been dreading since the day her mother died. "I'll start the bidding at $20. Kimball slammed his hand on the bar. Laughter erupted. A balding man in the corner shouted, "20 for that scrawny thing, she ain't worth 10 she." Clara's face burned. She kept her eyes on the floor, counting the knots in the wood. 1, 2, 3. Don't look up. Don't let them see you cry. Her father's voice echoed in her memory back when he was still her father, before the bottle took him. "You're stronger than you know, Clara girl." But she didn't feel strong. She felt like she was drowning. 30. A heavy-set man near the door raised his hand, grinning with tobacco-stained teeth. 35. Another voice, younger, eager. Kimball's eyes gleamed. "Now we're talking. Do I hear 40? Clara's breath came in short gasps. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. This was really happening. In minutes, she'd belonged to one of these men. She'd seen what happened to girls like her. They disappeared into homesteads and back rooms, and nobody ever asked questions. 45. The heavy-set man again, standing now, already claiming his prize. Then a new voice cut through the crowd, cold, measured, and final as a gravestone. 75. The room went dead silent. Clara's head snapped up. Through the haze of cigar smoke, she saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 50 years old, with gray threading through dark hair. His face was weathered like old leather carved by years of sun and wind. He wore a dusty duster coat and boots that had walked 1,000 hard miles. But it was his eyes that froze her. They weren't hungry like the others. They were sad. Kimball recovered first, his surprise melting into greedy satisfaction. 75. Well, now, Levi Thornton didn't expect to see you here today. That's quite a bid for a... I said 75. Levi's voice didn't rise, but every man in the room heard it. You taking it or not? Sold. Kimball slammed his hand down so fast he nearly knocked over a whiskey bottle. Pleasure doing business, Mr. Thornton. Levi walked forward, his boots heavy on the floorboards. Clara's entire body tensed. This was it. This was when he'd grab her, drag her outside, take what he'd paid for. She'd heard the stories. The ranchers were the worst because they had isolated land where nobody could hear you scream. He stopped 3 feet away and pulled a leather pouch from his coat. Counted out the money onto the bar without once looking at her. $75 in gold and silver. More money than Clara had seen in her entire life. She's all yours, Kimball said, already pocketing the coins. No refunds. Levi finally looked at Clara. She forced herself to meet his gaze to show she wasn't completely broken. She'd learned that much show weakness, and they hurt you worse. But he didn't leer, didn't smile. He just unbuttoned his duster and held it out. Put this on. Clara stared at the coat. It was a trick. Had to be. Men didn't give things without expecting something back. I don't... Her voice cracked. She hadn't spoken in days. It's cold outside, he said simply. Put it on. Her hands shook as she reached for the coat. It was heavy, warm, smelled like horse and sage, and something clean. She pulled it around her shoulders, drowning in fabric that actually covered her. Someone in the crowd snickered. Going soft, Thornton? She's supposed to earn that coat. Levi turned, and the laughter died. He didn't say a word. Didn't have to. The look in his eyes said everything. Try me. Nobody did. Come on. He walked toward the door. Clara's legs barely worked, but she forced them to move. Every eye in the tavern followed her. She heard whispers, felt their stares burning into her back. The door swung open, and sunlight hit her face, the first real sunlight in 3 weeks. Outside, a bay horse stood tied to the hitching post. Beautiful animal, well cared for. Levi untied the reins and turned to her. You ride? Clara shook her head. You're gonna learn. He swung into the saddle with practiced ease, then extended his hand. Come on up. She stared at his hand like it might be a snake. Where are you taking me? My ranch, 10 miles west. And then what? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. What do you want from me? He met her eyes, and something in his expression softened. Right now I want you to get on this horse before that crowd decides to follow us. She glanced back. Through the tavern window she could see faces pressed against the glass. Watching. Waiting. One of them was Garrett Slade, the man who'd bid $45. His expression promised this wasn't over. Clara grabbed Levi's hand. His grip was calloused but steady, and he pulled her up behind him with surprising gentleness. She had no choice but to hold onto his waist as he urged the horse forward. They rode through Dry Gulch's excuse for a main street, past the general store, the church that hadn't seen a preacher in 2 years, the schoolhouse with broken windows. People stopped to stare. Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house actually gasped. Clara wanted to disappear. You paid for me. She whispered, her voice barely audible over the horse's hooves. You paid $75, so just do it. Whatever you're gonna do. I can't stand the waiting. Levi was quiet for so long she thought he hadn't heard. Then, without turning around, he said, I didn't buy you, Clara. I bought your freedom. She went rigid against his back. What? You heard me. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody... Her throat closed up. Nobody does that. Well, I just did. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she bit them back. It was a trick. It had to be. Men didn't just hand out freedom like candy. There was always a price. They rode in silence for the next hour. The landscape shifted from the sorry excuse for civilization to open prairie, endless grass rolling under an endless sky. Clara had never been this far from town. Her whole life had been lived in a 5-block radius, her stepfather's house, the market, the tavern where her stepfather drank away what little money they had. She'd never seen anything this big, this empty, this terrifying. Almost there, Levi said. The ranch appeared like a mirage. A cabin small but solid. A barn that had seen better days but was still standing. Corrals holding a few cattle. A vegetable garden that someone had been tending with care. It wasn't much, but it was more than Clara had ever hoped to have. Levi dismounted and offered his hand again. This time she took it without hesitation, her legs nearly buckling when she hit the ground. 3 weeks of poor food and no sunlight had left her weak. He steadied her. Easy now. I'm fine. She pulled away, wrapped his coat tighter. She wasn't fine. She was dizzy and scared and so confused she could barely think straight. Levi led the horse to the barn. Clara followed because she didn't know what else to do. Inside, he unsaddled the animal with efficient movements, then grabbed a bucket. "Water pumps out front," he said. "Kitchen's to the right when you go in the cabin. There's bread and jerky in the cupboard. Help yourself." He walked past her toward the pump, leaving her standing in the barn doorway. Just like that. No orders. No demands. Just help yourself. Clara walked to the cabin on shaking legs. The door wasn't locked. Inside, it was simple but clean. A table with 2 chairs. A stone fireplace. A narrow bed in the corner with a real quilt. And next to the bed, a curtained-off area that must be where he slept. The cupboard held exactly what he'd said. Bread, jerky, some dried apples. Her stomach cramped with hunger, but she was afraid to touch anything. What if this was a test? What if he was watching to see if she was greedy? The door opened. Levi entered carrying 2 buckets of water. He poured one into a basin on the counter, the other into a pot over the fireplace. "Bathroom's out back," he said. "There's a clean dress hanging on the hook. Belonged to—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "It'll fit you better than what you're wearing." "Whose dress?" The question escaped before Clara could stop it. "My wife's." He didn't look at her. "She passed 4 years ago. Cancer." The word hung in the air between them. Clara thought of her mother wasted away from the same disease. The helplessness. The endless pain. The mercy of death when it finally came. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded once, then gestured to the bread. "Eat. You look half-starved." She waited until he walked outside before touching the food. The bread was dry but decent. The jerky tough but filling. She ate slowly, afraid her stomach would rebel after weeks of scraps. Through the window, she watched him work. He checked the chicken coop, mended a section of fence-hauled feed to the cattle. Normal ranch work. Like buying a girl at an auction, was just another Thursday chore. When the sun started sinking, Clara slipped out the back to find the bathroom. It was just an outhouse, but it was clean. And hanging on the hook, just like he'd said, was a dress, simple blue calico, worn but well made. The kind of dress a respectable woman would wear. Clara's hands trembled as she took off the filthy rag she'd been wearing for 3 weeks. Her body was a map of bruises, purple, yellow, green. Fingerprints on her arms where Kimball's hired men had grabbed her. A cut on her shoulder that was healing badly. She looked like she'd been through a war. She pulled on the blue dress. It was slightly too big, but it covered everything, made her feel almost human again. When she came back inside, Levi was stirring something in a pot over the fire. The smell made her stomach growl, despite the bread she'd eaten. "Stew," he said. "Nothing fancy." They ate in silence. Clara kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to tell her what he really wanted, what she really owed him. But he just ate his stew, then stood and collected the dishes. "You can take the bed," he said. Clara's blood froze. "And where will you—" "I'll sleep in the barn. Did it for months after Margaret died. Still do sometimes." "You're giving me your bed." "It's just a bed, Clara." He met her eyes, and she saw that same inexplicable sadness. "Get some rest. We'll figure things out in the morning." He walked out, leaving her alone in the cabin. Clara stood frozen for a full minute, waiting for him to come back, to change his mind, to demand payment. But he didn't. Slowly, carefully, she walked to the bed, touched the quilt. It was soft, hand-stitched. She could see the hours of love that went into every square. Margaret's hands had made this. Margaret, who'd been loved by a man who still slept in barns 4 years after her death. Clara lay down, still wearing the dress, still wearing his coat over it. She stared at the ceiling as darkness fell, listening to the night sounds. Crickets, a horse whinnying, the wind through the prairie grass. And for the first time in 3 weeks, she fell asleep without crying. She woke to screaming her own. The nightmare had been so real, she could still feel Kimball's hands, still smell the tavern's stench. The door burst open. Levi stood silhouetted against the pre-dawn light, shirtless, a rifle in his hands. "What happened? Who's here?" Clara pressed against the wall, gasping. Nothing. Nobody. I'm sorry. It was just... I'm sorry. He lowered the rifle, his expression clearing. Nightmares. She nodded, shame burning through her. He set the rifle by the door and lit a lamp. In the soft light, she could see scars across his chest, old wounds from a hard life. He pulled on the shirt he'd been carrying. They'll get better, he said quietly. Takes time, but they get better. How do you know? Because I have them too. He walked to the fireplace and started building up the coals. Coffee. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. Why are you being kind to me? He was quiet for a long moment, measuring coffee into a pot. You ever see something that just sits wrong in your gut? Something you can't walk away from even if it's not your business. Yes. That's why. He hung the pot over the flames. I was in town buying supplies, heard Kimball advertising his special auction. Walked into that tavern and saw you on the floor, and I thought... He stopped, his jaw working. I thought of Margaret. What would have happened to her if I hadn't been there when her first husband died and left her with nothing? What men like Slade would have done. So you saved me because I reminded you of your wife? No. He turned to face her. I saved you because it was the right thing to do, and because maybe if there's any justice in this world, someone would have done the same for Margaret if I hadn't been able to. The coffee perked. He poured 2 cups, handed her one. Clara wrapped her hands around the warmth, inhaling the bitter, rich smell. What happens now? She asked. Now you rest, you heal. You figure out what you want to do with your freedom. And if I have nowhere to go, then you stay here as long as you need. He sat at the table. I'm not expecting anything, Clara. Not work, not anything else. You're a guest. When you're ready, if you want to help around the ranch, that's your choice, but it's not required. I don't understand you. Not much to understand. I'm just a man trying to do right when I can. Clara studied him over her coffee cup. His weathered face, the gray in his hair, the sadness that seemed bone deep. He'd loved his wife. Really loved her. The kind of love Clara's mother had dreamed about in the early days before Clara's stepfather showed his true colors. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded. Finish your coffee, then get some more sleep if you can. Sun'll be up soon enough. But Clara didn't go back to bed. She sat at the table while Dawn crept across the prairie drinking coffee with a man who'd bought her freedom and wondered if maybe, just maybe, the world still had some goodness left in it. The answer came 3 days later when dust plumes appeared on the horizon and Garrett Slade rode up with 4 hired guns demanding Levi return what he'd stolen. But that's a different kind of morning. The kind where coffee turns cold and rifles come off the wall. And Clara Hayes learns that freedom isn't given, it's fought for. 3 days of peace. That's all Clara got before the past came riding up the road with guns and ugly intentions. She was hanging laundry when she saw the dust. 5 riders moving fast. Her hands froze on the wet sheet water dripping onto her borrowed boots. Every instinct screamed, run, but her legs wouldn't move. Levi emerged from the barn, a hammer still in his hand. He saw the riders, and his whole body changed shoulders back, jaw set, eyes hard as flint. Get inside, he said quietly. Who are they? Trouble. Get inside, Clara. Now. She ran for the cabin, her heart hammering. Through the window she watched Levi set down the hammer and walk toward the house with deliberate calm. He disappeared from view, then reappeared a moment later with his rifle. The riders pulled up 50 feet from the porch. Clara recognized the man in front immediately, Garrett Slade. Tall, handsome, in a cruel way, with blonde hair and cold blue eyes. The 4 men with him looked like exactly what they were. Hired guns with no conscience and plenty of experience. Thornton, Slade's voice carried across the yard. We need to talk. Levi stood on the porch, rifle resting casual in his arms. Then talk. I'm listening. You took something that was mine. I didn't take anything. I paid for it. You were there. Slade's horse shifted, sensing his rider's anger. You knew I wanted her. You bid just to spite me. I bid because I had the money and the inclination. What you wanted never entered my mind. Clara pressed against the wall, trying to make herself small. She'd seen Slade at the tavern, seen the way he'd looked at her, like she was a prize horse he intended to break. She's too young for you, old man, Slade said. What are you going to do with a girl like that? You can barely keep this place running as it is. What I do with my money and my property is none of your concern. Your property, Slade laughed. So you admit she's yours? Then sell her to me. I'll give you $125 profit for 3 days' use. That's a good deal. Clara's stomach turned. 3 days' use. Like she was a shovel or a plow. Levi's voice went deadly quiet. She's not for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. Now get off my land. Or what, you gonna shoot all 5 of us? Slade gestured to his men. You're a good shot, Thornton, I'll give you that. But you're not that good. Maybe not. But I'll sure as hell start with you, and we both know it. Levi raised the rifle an inch. Question is, are you willing to die for a grudge? The silence stretched out like wire pulled too tight. Clara held her breath, watching. One of Slade's men had his hand on his pistol. Another was scanning the area, looking for cover. Then Slade smiled, the kind of smile that made Clara's skin crawl. This isn't over, old man. You sleep real light, you hear, 'cause one of these nights when you're not expecting it. He didn't finish the threat. Didn't have to. Slade wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. They didn't hurry. That was the scariest part. They had all the time in the world, and they knew it. Levi didn't move until they were out of rifle range. Then he lowered the gun and let out a long breath. His hands were shaking. Clara opened the door. Are you all right? Fine. But his voice said otherwise. Stay inside for the rest of the day. Don't go outside unless I'm with you. Levi. Please, Clara. He finally looked at her, and the fear in his eyes made her chest tight. Just do what I ask, please. She nodded and closed the door. Through the window, she watched him check the perimeter test, the locks on the barn, scan the horizon. He was scared. This hard-weathered rancher who'd faced down 5 armed men, he was scared. And it was because of her. That night, Levi didn't go to the barn. He pulled a chair up to the door and sat with his rifle across his knees. Clara lay in the bed, pretending to sleep, listening to him breathe. You should have let him have me, she said into the darkness. Go to sleep, Clara. I'm serious. I'm not worth dying for. The chair creaked as he shifted. That's not for you to decide. Then whose decision is it? Mine, and I already made it. His voice was firm. Now get some sleep. Morning comes early on a ranch. But neither of them slept much that night. Clara drifted in and out, jerking awake at every sound. The wind, a coyote howling, the creak of the cabin settling. Each time she'd see Levi's silhouette by the door, still awake, still watching. When dawn finally broke, Clara gave up on sleep and got up. Levi's eyes were red-rimmed but alert. Coffee, she offered. I'll make it. You should. Levi. She walked to the cupboard and pulled out the coffee. I'm not helpless. Let me do something useful, or I'm going to lose my mind. He watched her for a moment, then nodded. All right, thank you. They drank coffee in silence as the sun rose. Clara's hands were steadier than they'd been 3 days ago. The food and rest had helped. She almost felt human again. I should leave, she said finally. No. Those men will come back. You said so yourself. They might, but that's not your fault. Levi set down his cup. You didn't ask for any of this. I made a choice. I knew what it might cost. Why? The question burst out of her. Why risk everything for someone you don't even know? He was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee like it held answers. You ever wonder what kind of person you really are? When it matters, when there's a cost. I don't understand. I spent 4 years asking God why he took Margaret. She was good, better than me, better than most people I know. And I'm still here wasting space going through the motions. He looked up, and the rawness in his expression made Clara's throat tight. Then I saw you in that tavern, saw what was happening, and I thought, if I walk away from this, if I let it happen, when I have the power to stop it, then Margaret's death was right. Because I don't deserve to be here if I can't even do this one decent thing. Tears burned in Clara's eyes. That's not fair to yourself. Maybe not, but it's true. He stood and grabbed his hat. I've got work to do. You want to help if there's mending in that basket? Margaret's old sewing kit is in the trunk, but only if you want to. He walked out, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts and a basket of torn shirts. She found the sewing kit exactly where he'd said. Inside was thread needles, scissors, and a small leather journal. Clara knew she shouldn't look, but curiosity won. She opened it carefully. Margaret's handwriting was neat and precise. The journal wasn't a diary, it was recipes. Instructions for dyeing fabric. Notes about which herbs grew best in the garden. Small sketches of quilt patterns. The mundane record of a life well lived. On the last page, written in shakier handwriting, were final words. Levi, don't you dare spend the rest of your life mourning me. I expect you to be happy, find someone, love again. You have too much goodness in you to waste it on grief. Promise me. M. Clara closed the journal with trembling hands. She set it back in the trunk and picked up the mending. Her stitches were clumsy compared to Margaret's work, but they held. That's what mattered. By midday, she'd mended 3 shirts and reinforced a pair of work pants. Her fingers ached, but it felt good, useful. Like maybe she wasn't just a burden. Levi came in for lunch, cold chicken and the last of the bread. Clara had found potatoes in the cellar and was boiling them over the fire. You didn't have to do all this, he said. I wanted to. Clara stirred the pot. Besides, you said I could help if I wanted to. I want to. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Thank you. They ate together, and for the first time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was almost comfortable. Clara watched him from under her lashes, this man who'd upended his life for a stranger. He had calluses on his hands and dirt under his nails. His face was weathered and worn. But there was something solid about him, something safe. Can I ask you something? Clara said. Go ahead. Why didn't you ever remarry after Margaret, I mean? He was quiet, chewing slowly. Didn't seem right. Margaret and we had something special. Felt like betraying her to try and replace it. But she wanted you to be happy. She said so in her journal. Clara caught herself. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked. It's all right. He set down his fork. I know what she wrote. Read it 100 times trying to convince myself to move on. But wanting something and being able to do it, those are different things. You're lonely. Yes. Simple. Honest. But loneliness is familiar, known, safe in its way. Clara understood that better than she wanted to admit. What did you two talk about? You and Margaret. His face softened at the memory. Everything. Nothing. She'd tell me about the book she was reading. I'd complain about stubborn cattle. She'd plan the garden. I'd worry about money. He picked up his coffee. We'd sit out on the porch on summer nights and just be together. That was enough. It sounds nice. It was. He met her eyes. What about you? You got family anywhere? Clara's jaw tightened. My mother died 2 years ago. Cancer like your Margaret. My stepfather. She stopped, bile rising in her throat. He wasn't a good man. When Mama was alive, he mostly ignored me. After she died, he started looking at me different, Then his gambling got worse. He owed money to some bad people. So he sold you to Kimball. He said it was temporary. Said once he won big he'd buy me back. Clara's laugh was bitter. He never came back. Not once in 3 weeks. I waited every day thinking maybe, but he didn't care, never did. Levi's hand curled into a fist on the table. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm better off. Clara stood and collected the dishes. At least now I know where I stand. And where's that? She looked at him, this strange man who'd shown her more kindness in 3 days than her stepfather had in 18 years. I don't know yet, but it's better than it was. The afternoon passed in careful routine. Levi worked on the fence line. Clara cleaned the cabin and started a stew for dinner. She found herself humming something her mother used to sing. The melody came easier than she expected. Through the window she watched Levi work. He moved with the efficiency of long practice, but there was a stiffness in his shoulders. He kept glancing toward the road, waiting. Dinner was ready when he came in. He washed up at the basin, scrubbing the dirt from his hands. Clara ladled stew into bowls and set out the last of the coffee. This is good, Levi said after the first bite. It's just stew. It's more than that. He gestured around the cabin. This place has felt like a tomb for 4 years. Now it feels like something else. What? A home. He said it quietly, like he was afraid to admit it out loud. Clara's chest went tight. Levi, I can't stay here forever. You know that, right? Eventually I'll need to figure out. I know. He set down his spoon. But for now, if you're willing, I'd like you to stay. Not as payment. Not as anything but a person who needs a safe place. And maybe. He stopped struggling with words. Maybe I need someone here too. Maybe this place is too big for just one person's grief. You're asking me to stay. Really stay. If you want. No strings, no expectations. Just stay. Clara looked around the cabin. At the mended shirts hanging by the door. The quilt Margaret had made. The coffee cups on the table. The fire crackling in the hearth. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd ever had. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. The smile that crossed Levi's face was small but real. Good. That's good. They finished dinner in comfortable silence. Clara washed the dishes while Levi banked the fire. The routine felt natural, like they'd been doing it for years instead of days. As darkness fell, Levi pulled his chair back to the door. You don't have to do that every night, Clara said. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. Until I'm sure Slade's given up, I'm not taking chances. Clara knew better than to argue. She climbed into bed, but sleep didn't come easy. She kept seeing Slade's cold eyes, hearing his threat. One of these nights when you're not expecting it. Somewhere around midnight, she heard the soft creak of floorboards. Her eyes snapped open. In the darkness, she could just make out Levi's silhouette, slumped in the chair, finally asleep. Then she heard it again. Outside. The subtle sound of careful footsteps. Her heart stopped. She slipped out of bed, moving silent as she could. Levi's rifle was leaning against the wall. She'd never fired a gun before, but she'd watched him check the load. She knew which end the bullets came out of. The footsteps came closer. Clara's hands shook as she lifted the rifle. It was heavier than she expected. Her finger found the trigger. The door handle turned slowly. Levi, she whispered. He jerked awake instantly, years of instinct taking over. His eyes found her, found the rifle, found the turning door handle. He was on his feet in a heartbeat, reaching for his pistol. The door burst open. But it wasn't Slade's men. It was a boy, maybe 14, thin as a rail, wide-eyed with fear. He stumbled inside and collapsed on the floor. Please, he gasped. Please help. They're coming. They're gonna kill us all. Levi was beside him in an instant, checking for injuries. Who's coming? Who are you? Billy? Billy Maxon, from the Henderson farm. The boy's words tumbled out. Mr. Slade and his men, they came tonight, said Mr. Henderson owed them money. When he couldn't pay, His voice broke. They shot him, right in front of Ma and the kids. Said they're coming for anyone who helped you, Mr. Thornton. Anyone who didn't speak up at the auction. Clara's blood went cold. The Hendersons had 4 children. Mrs. Henderson had gasped when Clara rode past that first day, but she hadn't said anything, hadn't tried to stop it. And now her husband was dead. Levi's face went hard as stone. Where's your mother now? Hiding with the kids in the root cellar. But Mr. Slade said he'd be back at dawn. Said he'd... Billy couldn't finish. Clara. Levi stood, his voice commanding. Get the medical kit. Billy, you're staying here where it's safe. But Ma, I'll get your mother and your brothers and sisters, all of them. But I need you here. You understand, I need you to protect Clara if anything happens to me. Billy's eyes went huge. Protect her. How? Levi pressed his pistol into the boy's hands. You know how to shoot? Yes, sir. Pa taught me. Good. Anyone comes through that door that's not me or your family, you shoot first and ask questions later. He turned to Clara. Bar the door behind me. Don't open it unless you hear my voice. If something goes wrong, if you hear gunfire and I don't come back, you take Billy and run for town. Find Sheriff Morrison. Tell him everything. Levi, you can't go alone. I'm not leaving that woman and those kids to die because Slade's got a grudge against me. He grabbed his rifle in his coat. Bar the door, Clara. He was out the door before she could argue. Clara shoved the heavy wooden bar into place with shaking hands, then pulled Billy away from the door. How far is your farm? She asked. 5 miles, maybe less if you cut through Copper Creek. Billy's hands were white-knuckled on the pistol. Miss, is Mr. Thornton gonna die because of us? No. Clara said it with more confidence than she felt. He's going to bring your mother home, all of you. She made Billy sit at the table and forced him to drink water. His story came out in pieces. Slade had arrived just after sunset. He'd been drunk mean, demanded Henderson pay a debt from a card game 6 months ago. When Henderson said he didn't have it, Slade shot him in the chest. Just like that. No warning. No mercy. Mrs. Henderson had screamed. The children had cried. And Slade had laughed. He said it was Mr. Thornton's fault, Billy whispered. Said if Mr. Thornton had stayed out of other people's business, this wouldn't have happened. Said he's going to make an example out of anyone who didn't stop him from taking you. Clara felt sick. How many people were at the auction? Maybe 30. But most of them left town right after, too scared to stay. 30 people who could die because of her. Because Levi had saved her. The hour that followed was the longest of Clara's life. She and Billy sat in silence, jumping at every sound. The wind, a coyote, the creak of the cabin. Each time Billy would raise the pistol with shaking hands. Then they heard it hoofbeats. Multiple horses. Billy stood, the pistol pointed at the door. Clara grabbed the rifle, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break. Mrs. Hayes, a woman's voice muffled. Mrs. Hayes, it's Sarah Henderson. Mr. Thornton said to call you that. Clara's hands shook as she lifted the bar. The door opened to reveal Levi on horseback. Sarah Henderson behind him, 3 small children clinging to her. Another horse carried 2 more kids holding on to each other. Quickly, Levi said. Inside, all of you. They piled into the cabin. Sarah was crying, her face red and swollen. The children were silent with shock. The oldest girl, maybe 12, had blood on her dress. Billy. Sarah pulled her son into a fierce hug. Oh, thank God, thank God. Clara helped Levi get everyone inside. He barred the door again, then checked the windows. His face was grim. They're coming, he said quietly. I saw campfire light on the ridge. They're waiting for dawn. How many? Clara asked. At least 8. Maybe more. He looked at Sarah. "I'm sorry about Thomas." Sarah's face crumpled, but she held it together for her children. "He was a good man, a good father. He didn't deserve—" Her voice broke. "No." Levi agreed. "He didn't." The oldest Henderson girl spoke up, her voice small. "It's because of the auction, isn't it? Because Pa didn't say nothing when they took Miss Clara." Everyone looked at Clara. She wanted to disappear, to take back every moment since that tavern floor. "It's because Garrett Slade is a coward and a bully," Levi said firmly. "And bullies always blame other people for their own evil. This isn't your father's fault. It's not Miss Clara's fault. It's Slade's fault. His alone." But the guilt still sat heavy in Clara's chest. These children, this grieving widow, all because a stranger had shown her kindness. "What do we do?" Sarah asked. Levi checked his rifle. "We wait for dawn. When they come, you and the children stay low. Billy, Clara, if they get past me, you protect these kids. Understand?" "We're going to die," one of the younger boys whimpered. "No." Levi knelt down to the child's level. "We're going to live. Because that's what your father would want. That's what we owe him." The hours crawled by. Levi watched the window. Clara kept the children calm, telling them stories her mother used to tell her. Sarah sat with her arms around her youngest, rocking back and forth, silent tears streaming down her face. When the first gray light touched the horizon, Levi stood. "They're moving." Clara could see them now, dark shapes on horseback coming down from the ridge. 8 riders, maybe 9, all armed. They stopped just outside rifle range. Garrett Slade rode forward alone, close enough to be heard, but not close enough to be an easy target. "Thornton." His voice echoed across the yard. "Send the girl out and we'll let the rest of you live. You have my word." Levi opened the window just wide enough to shout back. "Your word's worth less than dirt. Slade, get off my land." "You got a widow and 6 orphans in there now, old man. That blood's on your hands. How many more people have to die before you stop being stubborn?" Clara's hands clenched. He was right. He was right, and she hated it. "Levi," she whispered, "let me go. Please. Don't let more people die because of me." "No." "They'll kill you. They'll kill these children." He turned to her, and the fierce determination in his eyes stopped her cold. "They'll kill you, Clara. That's what happens to girls like you in the hands of men like Slade. I've seen it before. I won't see it again." "But—" "No." He turned back to the window. "There's another way." He raised his rifle and fired once. The bullet kicked up dust at Slade's horse's feet. The animal reared, nearly throwing its rider. "That's your warning," Levi shouted. "Next one's not a miss. Now get gone before I lose my patience." Slade's response was immediate. He wheeled his horse back and gave a signal. His men spread out, circling the cabin. "They're surrounding us," Billy whispered. Levi slammed the shutters closed. "Everyone on the floor, now." The first shots came a moment later, bullets punching through the walls, shattering the window glass. The children screamed. Sarah threw herself over the youngest ones. Clara grabbed Billy and pulled him down. Levi returned fire, moving from window to window. One of Slade's men cried out, "Hit!" but there were still too many. "The barn!" Someone shouted outside. "Burn them out!" Clara's heart stopped. Fire. They were going to burn the cabin with all of them inside. Levi knew it too. His face went pale. "Sarah, get the children to the root cellar. There's a tunnel Margaret dug during the Indian Wars. Comes out behind the ridge." "What about you?" Sarah asked. "I'll hold them off. Give you time to run. When you get to town, find the sheriff. Tell him." "No." Clara stood up. "I'm not running anymore." "Clara." "They want me fine. I'll go, but not as their prisoner." She grabbed the pistol from Billy's hands. "I'll go out the front door. While they're distracted, you all run. Get these children to safety." "That's suicide," Levi said. Maybe, but it's my choice. Clara met his eyes. You gave me freedom. Now let me use it. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then something in his expression shifted. Not acceptance, not surrender, but understanding. All right, he said quietly, but not alone. We go together. Levi. Together, or not at all. Outside smoke started curling under the door. They were out of time. Sarah Henderson grabbed Clara's arm hard enough to bruise. You can't go out there. They'll kill you both. They'll kill us all if we stay. Clara pulled free, her jaw set. The smoke was thickening now, seeping through every crack. The children were coughing. Time had run out. Levi moved to the door, checking his rifle one last time. Sarah, take the kids down. Wait 5 minutes after you hear shooting, then run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Mr. Thornton. 5 minutes. Promise me. Sarah's face crumpled, but she nodded. She gathered her children with fierce urgency. Come on, babies. We're going on an adventure. Just like I told you about. Remember? Billy hesitated, torn between protecting his family and staying to fight. Levi put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Your mother needs you more than I do. Get them to safety. That's an order. Yes, sir. Billy's voice cracked. Thank you, sir, for everything. They disappeared through the trapdoor in the back room. Clara heard the scrape of the tunnel opening, then nothing. Just the crackle of flames starting to catch on the barn's dry wood and the occasional shout from outside. Levi turned to Clara. His face was set, determined, but his eyes held something softer. You know this is probably the end. I know. And you're sure? Clara thought of the tavern floor. The rope burns on her wrists. The 3 weeks of waiting to be sold. The life she would have had if this man hadn't stood up and said one number. 75. I'm sure. He nodded once. Then let's give them hell. They moved to the door together. Levi lifted the bar and kicked it open. Sunlight flooded in, blinding after the smoky darkness. Clara raised her pistol with shaking hands. The scene outside stopped her cold. Slade's men had pulled back from the barn when the fire started, afraid it would spook their horses. They were scattered, watching, waiting for the occupants to run out, choking and desperate. They weren't expecting 2 people to walk out armed and steady. Hold! Levi's voice cracked like a whip. Don't move, or I drop the first man who does. Slade sat his horse near the well, smirking. Thornton, finally showing sense. Send out the girl and... I'm right here, Clara said. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised her. You want me? Come get me. The smirk faltered. Slade hadn't expected her to talk, to stand, to look him in the eye like she was a person instead of property. Girl, you don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. Clara took a step forward, the pistol steady in her hands now. I'm choosing. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing. And I choose to stand here with a man who treated me like a human being instead of going with you. One of Slade's men laughed nervously. Boss, maybe we should just... Shut up. Slade's face was red now, anger replacing calculation. You think you're brave, girl? You think standing there with a gun you probably don't know how to use makes you special? No, Clara said quietly. But it makes me free. She saw it happen in slow motion, Slade's hand moving to his gun, Levi raising his rifle, her own finger tightening on the trigger. 3 shots rang out almost simultaneously. Slade's bullet hit the doorframe inches from Clara's head. Levi's caught Slade in the shoulder, spinning him in the saddle. And Clara's, she couldn't believe it. Clara's hit Slade's gun hand, sending his pistol flying. Then all hell broke loose. Slade's men opened fire. Levi grabbed Clara and pulled her behind the water trough. Bullets punched through wood and dirt, kicking up dust clouds. Clara's ears rang from the gunfire. She couldn't think, could barely breathe. Stay down! Levi shouted over the noise. He returned fire methodically, each shot deliberate. One of Slade's men fell from his horse clutching his leg. Another dove behind the barn. The odds were still terrible, 2 against 7, with Slade wounded but not out. Clara forced herself to think through the panic. 7 men, limited ammunition. They couldn't win a straight fight. But maybe they didn't have to. "The well," she gasped. "Levi, the well." He understood immediately. The old well between the cabin and the barn, it had a stone wall 3 feet high. Better cover than the water trough. But getting there meant crossing 15 feet of open ground. "I'll cover you," he said. "When I start shooting, you run. Don't stop. What about you?" "I'll be right behind you. Go." He stood and fired 3 quick shots. Clara ran. Her legs felt like water, but they moved. She could hear bullets hitting the ground around her, feel the heat of near misses. Then she was sliding behind the well's stone wall, gasping. Levi was reloading. "On 3. 1, 2. He ran. Clara fired the pistol wildly, not aiming, just trying to keep heads down. Levi dove behind the well, just as a bullet grazed his arm. Blood bloomed on his sleeve. "You're hit?" "It's nothing, just a scratch." But his face was pale. They huddled behind the well, catching their breath. The barn was fully engulfed, now flames leaping 30 feet high. The heat was intense even at this distance. Slade's men were regrouping, spreading out to flank them. "We can't hold here," Levi said. "They'll surround us." Clara's mind raced. Think. Think like you want to live. "The chickens." "What?" "The chicken coop. It's stone too behind the barn, if we can get there." "That's 50 feet through crossfire. We'd never make it." "Not together. But if I go first, draw their attention." "Absolutely not." "Levi, listen to me." Clara grabbed his arm, feeling his blood warm and sticky on her fingers. "They want me, not you. If I run, they'll focus on catching me, not killing me. That gives you a clear shot. It also gets you killed. Maybe, but staying here definitely gets us both killed." She checked the pistol. 3 bullets left. "Besides, you said I was free to choose. This is my choice." He stared at her, and something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance, never that, but respect. "Margaret would have liked you. You're both too damn stubborn for your own good." "Is that a yes?" "It's a God help me yes." He shifted position, wincing at the movement. "But Clara, you run fast and you run smart. Zigzag. Don't give them an easy target." "What about after, if I make it?" "There's a root cellar behind the coop. Get inside and bar it. I'll come for you." "Promise." He met her eyes. "I promise. Now go before I change my mind." Clara took a deep breath. Her whole body was shaking, but her mind was clear. Strange how clarity came when you accepted you might die. She thought of her mother, wondered if she was watching. Hoped she was proud. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Thank me when we're alive to appreciate it." Clara stood and ran. Immediately the shooting intensified. She heard Slade's voice screaming, "Get her! Don't kill her! Just bring her down!" Men scrambled to mount their horses. Clara zigzagged, like Levi said, her lungs burning. The coop was so far, too far. A bullet hit the ground by her left foot. Another buzzed past her ear like an angry wasp. She stumbled, caught herself, kept going. Behind her, Levi's rifle cracked steadily. Someone screamed. A horse whinnied in pain or fear. Then she was at the coop, yanking open the root cellar door. She tumbled inside and slammed it shut, throwing the bolt. Darkness swallowed her. She pressed her back against the cool earth wall and tried to breathe. Outside, the gunfight continued. She could hear it through the ground-muffled pops and cracks, men shouting, horses stamping. Then a sound that made her blood freeze, Slade's voice closer than before. "Thornton, I know she's in there. You got 2 choices. Surrender or watch me burn that cellar same as the barn. Levi's response was another rifle shot. Clara heard a yelp of pain. You stubborn old fool. You're gonna die for a whore you've known a week? She's not a whore. Levi's voice was hoarse but strong. She's worth 10 of you, Slade 20. You're not fit to breathe the same air. Silence. Then Slade's laugh, cold and mean. Fine. Have it your way. Boys, torch the coop. Clara's heart stopped. She looked around frantically in the darkness. The cellar was maybe 8 by 8 feet dirt walls, no other exit. A tomb. She was in a tomb, and they were going to burn her alive. Her hands found the pistol. 3 bullets. She could hear footsteps above, men moving around the coop. Smelled coal oil being splashed on wood. They weren't bluffing. She thought of Sarah Henderson's children, hopefully safe by now. Thought of Levi, wounded and outnumbered. Thought of Margaret's journal, "Don't waste your life on grief." Clara aimed the pistol at the door. If they were going to burn her, she'd take at least one of them with her. The footsteps overhead stopped. Someone was standing right on top of the cellar door. She could see his shadow through the cracks. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Then she heard something that changed everything. Hoofbeats, lots of them, coming fast. "Riders!" one of Slade's men shouted. "Boss, we got riders coming in from the east." "How many?" "Can't tell. Maybe a dozen. More." Slade cursed viciously. "It's the sheriff. Has to be. That Henderson brat must have made it to town." "What do we do?" A pause. Clara held her breath, counting her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. "We run," Slade said finally. "Leave the old man. We'll settle this another time." "What about the girl?" Another pause, longer this time. Clara could almost feel Slade's hatred through the wood and earth. "Leave her, for now. But this isn't over. You hear me, Thornton? This isn't over." The footsteps retreated. Horses whinnied and stamped as men mounted in a hurry. Then the sound of them riding away, fading into the distance. Clara didn't move. Couldn't. It might be a trick. A trap. "Clara!" Levi's voice muffled but close. "Clara, they're gone. You can come out." She still didn't move. Her hands were locked on the pistol, her body frozen. "Clara, please, I need to know you're all right." That broke through. She lowered the gun and fumbled with the bolt. Her hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries. Then she was pushing the door open, stumbling into sunlight and smoke. Levi was there. Blood on his arm, dirt on his face, but alive. He caught her as her legs gave out. "I've got you. You're safe. I've got you." Clara buried her face in his chest and sobbed. Not delicate crying, ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. All the fear she'd been holding back, all the terror, all the certainty. She was going to die. It all came pouring out. Levi just held her one hand in her hair, murmuring things she couldn't quite hear. Probably didn't need to. The tone said everything. The hoofbeats got louder. Clara pulled back, wiping her face, trying to compose herself. A dozen riders came around the burning barn. At the front was a man with a silver star, Sheriff Morrison. Behind him rode men from town. The blacksmith. The feed store owner. Even old Doc Matthews with his medical bag. And walking alongside the horses, dirty and exhausted but alive, were Sarah Henderson and her 6 children. Billy broke into a run when he saw them. "Mr. Thornton, Miss Clara? You're alive!" Sarah wasn't far behind, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed both of them in a fierce hug. "Thank God! Thank God! When we heard the shooting, we thought, we're fine," Levi said, even though blood was dripping from his arm onto the dirt. "You got them to safety. That's what matters." Sheriff Morrison dismounted, surveying the damage. The barn was a total loss, just smoking timber and ash. The cabin had scorch marks, but was intact. Bullet holes everywhere. "Levi," the sheriff said, You look like hell. Feel worse. But I'm standing. Mrs. Henderson told me what happened. Slade killed Thomas. Sarah's face went white at her husband's name, but she nodded. Shot him in cold blood. Said it was Mr. Thornton's fault for interfering at the auction. The sheriff's jaw tightened. Where's Slade now? Ran when he heard you coming, Levi said. Headed west, I think. Him and 7 men. 7. He started with 9 at the Henderson place. 2 won't be riding anywhere for a while. Levi gestured toward the barn area. 1 took a bullet in the leg, other got grazed pretty good. We'll track them down. Morrison looked at Clara for the first time. You must be the girl who started all this. Clara's stomach dropped. Here it came. The blame. The accusation. Just like the Henderson children had said this was all her fault. But Morrison just shook his head. Slade's been itching for an excuse to go wild for years. If it wasn't you, it would have been something else. Don't you carry that guilt? But Mr. Henderson, Thomas Henderson was my friend. Morrison's voice was rough with emotion. And he died because Garrett Slade is a murdering bastard who hides behind gambling debts and property disputes. Not because you existed. You understand me? Clara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Doc Matthews stepped forward, eyeing Levi's bloody arm. Let me see that. It's just a graze. And I'm just a doctor who's seen men lose arms to infection from just a graze. Sit down and shut up. Levi sat. Doc Matthews cut away the sleeve and cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency. Levi didn't flinch, but Clara saw his jaw tighten. You're lucky, Doc said. 1/4 inch to the left and it would have hit the artery. As it is, you'll have a scar and a sore arm for a few weeks. I've had worse. I know. I've treated most of it. Doc wrapped the wound in clean bandages. Keep it clean. Change the dressing daily. And for God's sake, Levi, try not to get shot again this week. I'll do my best. The sheriff organized his men to search for Slade's wounded and gather evidence. Clara stood with Sarah and the children watching. The Henderson kids clung to their mother silent and shell-shocked. The youngest couldn't be more than 4, kept asking when Papa was coming home. Sarah's face broke each time, but she held it together. Soon, baby. Papa's just... He had to go on ahead. He's waiting for us. Clara understood that lie, the necessary lie. The kind you tell when the truth is too heavy for small shoulders. Mrs. Henderson, she said quietly, I'm so sorry. If I could take it back. Stop. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Sheriff's right. This is Slade's doing, not yours. She looked at Clara with red-rimmed eyes. You know what Thomas said after that auction? He said, thank God someone had the guts to do what was right. He was proud of Mr. Thornton. Told me so that night. He did. He did. Said maybe there was hope for this town after all, if men like Levi Thornton were still willing to stand up. Sarah's voice broke. He was a good man, a good father, and he died proud of doing what was right, even if it was just staying silent. The sheriff called Sarah over to give a formal statement. Clara stood alone, watching the smoke from the barn rise into the clear blue sky. She felt wrung out, empty, like she'd lived a whole lifetime in the past few hours. Levi appeared at her elbow. You did good back there. I almost got us killed. You saved those children, gave them time to escape. He looked at his bandaged arm. And you're a better shot than you know. Hitting Slade's hand from that distance with a pistol, most men couldn't do that. I was aiming for his chest. Levi's laugh was surprised and genuine. Even better. Come on, let's see what's salvageable. They walked through the wreckage together. The barn was a total loss, but the animals had been in the pasture and were safe. The cabin had smoke damage, but was structurally sound. Clara's blue dress. Margaret's dress had a bullet hole through the skirt where it hung by the door. I'm sorry, Clara said. About the dress. It's just cloth. Margaret would have cared more about you being alive to wear it. Levi picked up his chair from where he'd been sitting guard. It had 3 bullet holes, though this chair might be beyond saving. Despite everything, Clara felt a laugh bubble up. It came out half sob, half giggle, completely hysterical. Levi joined in, and then they were both laughing at the absurdity of it all. The fear and terror and gunfight, and here they were worried about furniture. It felt good, necessary, like lancing a wound to let the poison out. The laughter faded, leaving them standing in the damaged cabin surrounded by evidence of how close they'd come to dying. "What happens now?" Clara asked. "Now we clean up, rebuild. Morrison will hunt Slade down, and justice will be done." "And if he doesn't catch him?" Levi's face hardened. "Then we'll deal with that when it comes. But Clara..." He turned to face her fully. "What you said out there, about choosing, about being free, you meant that..." "Every word." "Then you're free to leave. I won't hold you here, not after this. It's too dangerous." Clara looked around the cabin, at the bullet holes and smoke damage, at the mended shirt still hanging by the door, at the quilt on the bed and the coffee cups on the table and the garden visible through the window. "What if I don't want to leave? You just survived a gunfight. Most people would run as far and fast as they could." "I'm not most people." Clara met his eyes. "You gave me something nobody else ever did. You treated me like I mattered, like I was worth saving. I'm not walking away from that." "It's going to be hard. Rebuilding, waiting for Slade to make his next move, dealing with the town's talk. I've survived worse. Have you..." Clara thought of the tavern floor, the rope burns, the 3 weeks of terror. "Yes, I have. And you know what I'm done surviving. I want to live, really live, and I can't do that running away every time things get hard." Something shifted in Levi's expression. The same look he'd had at the well when she'd insisted on drawing fire. Not acceptance, understanding. "All right," he said quietly. "Then stay. Help me rebuild. We'll face whatever comes together." "Together," Clara agreed. The sheriff came to the door. "Levi, we found one of Slade's men. The one you shot in the leg. He's talking. Says Slade's headed for the territorial border plans to lay low in Wyoming for a few months." "He'll be back," Levi said. "Probably. But we'll be ready. And Levi..." Morrison glanced at Clara. "The town's talking about what you did, about how you stood up to Slade. Is that good or bad?" "Good, real good. People are calling you a hero. Some are even calling her one too." He nodded at Clara. "Girl who shot Garrett Slade. That's a story that'll spread." Clara felt her face heat. "I just did what I had to." "That's what heroes do." Morrison tipped his hat. "We're heading back to town. Doc Matthews wants Mrs. Henderson and the kids checked over. You two need anything, you send word." "Will do. Thanks for coming, Dan." "Thank young Billy. He ran 5 miles in the dark to reach town. Brave kid." The sheriff mounted his horse. "Take care of yourselves. And Levi, watch your back." They watched the group ride away. Sarah turned in her saddle to wave goodbye. The children too, even the little ones. They looked lost and scared, but alive. That was something. When they were alone, Levi and Clara stood in the doorway of the damaged cabin. The sun was high now, burning away the last of the smoke. The prairie stretched out endless and golden, beautiful and brutal like everything else in this land. "We should check the damage properly," Levi said. "See what needs fixing first." "The fence line by the creek broke during the shooting. I saw it." "Good eye. We'll start there tomorrow. Today." He looked exhausted suddenly. "Today we rest." They spent the afternoon in quiet cleanup, sweeping up broken glass, airing out smoke-damaged blankets, boarding up the broken window. Simple, methodical work that kept their hands busy and their minds from replaying the morning's terror. By evening, the cabin looked almost normal. Clara made stew from the last of the vegetables the garden would need tending now that the barn wasn't blocking the light. They ate in comfortable silence, too tired for conversation. When full dark came, Levi pulled his damaged chair to the door again. "You don't have to," Clara said. "Slade's gone. For now, but I'm not taking chances." He settled in with his rifle. "Get some sleep. You've earned it." Clara lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She could hear Levi breathing the creak of the chair when he shifted position. Outside, the prairie sang its night song, crickets and coyotes, and wind through grass. She thought she'd be too wired to sleep, but exhaustion dragged her under. Her last thought was of Levi's voice saying, "Together," and how that one word felt like a promise. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard him whisper something, maybe a prayer, maybe just talking to Margaret. But Clara thought she caught her own name in there wrapped up with words like brave and strong and worth it. She fell asleep smiling. When dawn came, it brought with it the work of rebuilding both the ranch and the fragile trust between two people who'd survived the fire together. But that's the thing about fire. It destroys, yes, but it also purifies. And in the ashes, new things can grow. Stronger things. Things that bend, but don't break. Clara Hayes had been sold shot at and nearly burned alive. But she was still standing, still choosing, still free. And that she was learning made all the difference. The work started before the sun was fully up. Clara woke to the sound of hammer on wood. Levi already outside beginning repairs on the fence. She dressed quickly in the bullet-torn dress, made coffee, and brought it out to him. He looked up from his work, surprise crossing his face. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." She handed him the cup. "But you made it every morning for me. Seemed fair to return the favor." He took the coffee with his good hand, the bandaged arm moving stiffly. "Thank you." They stood there in the early light, drinking coffee and surveying the damage. The burned barn skeleton, the scorched earth, the broken fence line. It looked like a battlefield, because that's exactly what it had been. "Where do we start?" Clara asked. "The fence. Can't have the cattle wandering off." He set down his cup and picked up the hammer again. "You know anything about fence building?" "No, but I can learn." He showed her how to brace the posts, how to string the wire tight enough to hold, but not so tight it would snap in winter. Her hands were clumsy at first, earning splinters and pinched fingers. But she kept at it, working alongside him in companionable silence. By midday, they'd repaired 50 feet of fence. Clara's arms ached, and her hands were raw, but it felt good. Honest. Like she was earning her place here instead of just accepting charity. They broke for lunch, cold beef and the last of the bread. Clara made a mental note to bake tomorrow if she could find flour in the smoke-damaged stores. "You're a quick learner," Levi said, flexing his injured arm with a wince. "Had a good teacher." Clara studied his face. The lines of pain around his eyes, the way he favored his left side. "How's the arm really?" "Hurts like the devil, but I've had worse." "You keep saying that. How much worse have you had?" He was quiet for a moment, then pulled up his shirt to show a puckered scar on his side. "Took a knife in a bar fight when I was 20. Nearly died." He pointed to another scar on his shoulder. "Arrow from a hunting accident. And this one." He touched a thin line on his jaw. "Horse kicked me when I was 15, broke my jaw in 3 places." Clara stared at the map of violence written on his body. "How are you still alive?" "Luck. Stubbornness. Margaret's nursing." His expression softened at his wife's name. "She patched me up more times than I can count. Used to say I was determined to make her a widow before her time." She sounds like she had a sense of humor. She did. Even at the end, when the pain was bad, she'd still make jokes. Told me if I moped around after she died, she'd haunt me. He smiled, sad but genuine. "Sometimes I think she does. Little things. A book I swear I left on the table showing up on the shelf. Coffee made just the way she used to make it. Maybe she is watching over you. Maybe. If she is, She probably gave me hell for getting shot yesterday." He stood grimacing. "Come on, daylight's burning." They worked through the afternoon. The physical labor helped Clara's mind settle. Every nail driven, every wire strung, every post braced. It all felt like proof that she was still here, still alive, still fighting. Around 3, a wagon appeared on the horizon. Clara's hand instinctively went to the pistol Levi had insisted she keep on her. "Easy," Levi said. "That's Doc Matthews' wagon." Sure enough, the old doctor pulled up with his medical bag and a basket covered with a cloth. "Afternoon. Thought I'd check that arm and bring some supplies. Mrs. Henderson sent food, said you two saved her children's lives, and the least she could do was keep you fed." Clara helped unload the basket, while Doc Matthews examined Levi's wound. There was bread preserves, smoked ham, fresh eggs, even a pie. "Tell Sarah we're grateful," Levi said. "But she doesn't owe us anything." "Try telling her that. Woman's got a will like iron." Doc cleaned the wound and applied fresh bandages. "Healing well. Keep doing what you're doing, and try not to use that arm too much. Hard to do when there's work needs doing. Then get help. Half the men in town are talking about coming out here to assist with rebuilding." Levi looked uncomfortable. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity. It's neighbors helping neighbors. Besides," Doc glanced at Clara, "you two are heroes. People want to be associated with that." After the doctor left, Clara and Levi sat on the porch eating Sarah's pie. It was apple perfectly spiced, the crust flaky and golden. Clara closed her eyes, savoring it. "I haven't had pie like this since my mother died," she said softly. "Margaret used to make apple pie every fall, used to compete with Sarah at the county fair." Levi smiled at the memory. They were both so stubborn about who had the better recipe. Never could decide. Which one won? Neither. They'd tie for first almost every year. Drove the judges crazy. He scraped the last crumbs from his plate. Margaret would have liked Sarah. They had that same fierce determination. Clara thought about that two women she'd never know connected by recipes and determination and the men they'd loved. "Do you think Margaret would have approved of me being here?" "I know she would have." Levi set down his plate. Margaret believed everyone deserved kindness, second chances. She saw the good in people even when they couldn't see it themselves. "Is that why you stayed with her, even when she was sick?" "I stayed with her because I loved her. Because leaving wasn't even a thought in my head." His voice was firm. "That's what love is, Clara. Not the easy parts, the laughter and the good days. It's staying through the hard parts, the sickness and the fear and the grief. My stepfather left the moment things got hard. Then he's a coward and a fool." Levi met her eyes. Love isn't about convenience. It's about commitment. About choosing someone every day, even when it costs you. Clara felt something shift in her chest. "Is that what you're doing with me, choosing me, even when it costs you?" "Yes, though it's not costing me nearly as much as you might think." He stood and collected the plates. "Come on, we've got a few more hours of light." They worked until sunset, finishing the fence repairs. Clara's whole body ached, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from honest work and progress made. That night, Clara took over the cooking while Levi tended the animals. She found flour that had survived the smoke and mixed up biscuits. Not as good as Sarah's, but edible. She fried the ham and scrambled eggs, set the table with the chipped plates. When Levi came in, he stopped in the doorway. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to. You've been doing everything for me since the day you bought me. Let me contribute something." They ate together, and Clara realized this was starting to feel normal. Coming together at the end of the day, sharing a meal, talking about work and plans and small things. It felt like what she imagined a family felt like. "I was thinking," Levi said, mopping up egg with a biscuit, "about what Doc said, about people wanting to help. You don't want their help." "It's not that. It's just—" He struggled with the words. "I've been alone for 4 years. Got used to doing everything myself. Asking for help feels like admitting weakness. Or it feels like admitting you're human and you can't do everything alone." Clara poured more coffee. "My mother used to say pride was a poor substitute for companionship. Your mother was a wise woman." "She was. Until the sickness took her." Clara's throat tightened. Watching her waste away knowing there was nothing I could do, that was the worst part. The helplessness. "I know." Levi's voice was rough. "I sat by Margaret's bed for 6 months, watched her fade a little more each day. Near the end, she couldn't even keep down water. I'd have sold my soul to take her pain away." They sat in shared understanding, two people who'd watched death come slow and cruel for the people they loved. "How did you keep going?" Clara asked. "After she died?" "Barely. For the first year, I just existed. Went through the motions. Fed the animals, fixed things that broke, stared at the walls." He looked at his bandaged arm. "Then one day I realized I was still breathing. Still here. And I had 2 choices: keep existing or start living again." "Which did you choose?" "Bit of both. Some days are better than others. But every morning I wake up and choose to try. That's all any of us can do." Clara absorbed that, choosing to try, every day, even when it was hard. "I want to learn that. How to really live instead of just survive." "You're already doing it. You stood up to Slade, fought back, chose to stay here even after everything." Levi reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. "That takes more courage than most people ever manage." The touch was brief, but it sent warmth through Clara's whole body. Not desire exactly, something deeper. Connection. Understanding. The knowledge that someone saw her and valued her for who she was, not what she could provide. The next morning brought visitors. Just after dawn, a wagon rolled up carrying 3 men from town, the blacksmith, the feed store owner, and a young rancher named Tom Miller. They brought tools and materials and offers of help. Levi was stiff, at first uncomfortable with accepting assistance. But Clara saw his expression soften when Tom said, "My wife heard what you did, Mr. Thornton, what you both did. She sent me out here with instructions not to come home until I'd helped you rebuild. Said if more men stood up like you did, this would be a better town." They spent the day working on a new barn, smaller than the old one but functional. The men worked well together, the rhythm of building bringing easy conversation. Clara helped where she could, hauling water and holding boards steady and listening to their talk. She learned that Tom and his wife were expecting their first child, that the blacksmith had lost his own daughter to fever 3 years ago and still grieved her, that the feed store owner had a stutter that disappeared when he was focused on work. They were just people, flawed and grieving and trying their best in a hard land. By evening, the barn's frame was up. The men left with promises to return the next day. Levi stood looking at the structure, something like wonder on his face. "I couldn't have done this alone," he admitted. "Not with one arm barely working." "That's why they came, because you don't have to do it alone." Clara handed him water. "Your pride's showing again." He laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "You're getting bold, Miss Hayes." "Someone has to keep you honest, Mr. Thornton." The banter felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this dance for years instead of days. Clara realized she was smiling more, laughing more. The constant fear that had lived in her chest since her mother's death was loosening its grip. Over the next week, more people came. Sheriff Morrison brought news that Slade had been spotted in Wyoming, laying low like his captured man had said. Sarah Henderson came with her children, bringing more food and helping Clara plant a new garden. Even Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house appeared tight-lipped, but carrying fabric for new curtains. "Can't have you living in a house that looks like a battlefield," she said primly. "What would people think?" Clara and Levi worked alongside the visitors, rebuilding not just structures, but something else, a sense of community. of belonging. The town that had watched Clara be auctioned off without protest was slowly transforming into a place where people stood together. Not everyone was pleased. Some of the men who'd bid at the auction avoided looking at Clara in town. The barkeep Kimball closed his tavern and left in the middle of the night, taking his profits and his shame elsewhere. Good riddance, Clara thought. But most people were kind. Curious, maybe. Uncomfortable at first, but willing to see her as a person instead of property. One afternoon, Sarah brought her oldest daughter Emma to visit. The girl was 12, quiet and serious since her father's death. She watched Clara with careful eyes. "Ma says you shot Mr. Slade," Emma said finally. "I did, in the hand." "Were you scared?" Clara considered lying, giving the brave answer, but she remembered being 12 and scared and wanting truth, not platitudes. "Terrified. I thought I was going to die." "But you did it anyway." "I did it anyway." Emma absorbed this. Pa used to say brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you're scared. Your father was right. The girl's eyes filled with tears. I miss him so much. Clara pulled Emma into a hug. This child who'd lost her father because of Clara's freedom. Emma clung to her, crying the tears she'd been holding back. Sarah watched from the doorway, her own eyes wet. "Thank you," Sarah mouthed silently. That night, Clara woke to Levi calling out in his sleep. Not words exactly, just sounds of distress. She got up and found him thrashing in his makeshift bed, in the corner tangled in blankets. "Levi." She touched his shoulder gently. "Levi, wake up." He jerked awake, gasping. For a moment, he didn't seem to know where he was. Then his eyes focused on her face. "Clara, I'm sorry. Did I wake you?" "It's all right. Nightmare." He sat up, running a hand through his graying hair. "Margaret, at the end, I dream about it sometimes. About not being able to help her. I have those dreams too. About my mother." Clara sat on the edge of his bed without thinking. The helplessness is the worst part. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. "In the dream she's calling for me, but I can't reach her. There's always something in the way. Fire or water or just distance I can't cross. In mine she's asking me to save her and I don't know how. I keep trying different things but nothing works." Clara's voice cracked. "I wake up feeling like I failed her." "You didn't fail her. You were there. That's what mattered." "Were you there when Margaret died?" Holding her hand. "She went peaceful at the end. Said she could see her mother waiting for her." Levi's voice was thick with emotion. "She squeezed my hand one last time and said, 'Don't waste it, Levi. Don't waste the life you have left.' Then she was gone." They sat in the darkness, two people bound by loss and survival. "Do you think they'd be proud?" Clara asked. "Your Margaret and my mother, of what we're doing here." "I think Margaret would tell me to stop sleeping in corners and use the actual bed. And your mother would probably tell you to stop wearing a dress with a bullet hole in it." Clara laughed despite the tears on her cheeks. "You're probably right." "I'll make you a deal," Levi said. "I'll use the bed if you let me buy you a new dress next time we're in town." "That's not a fair trade. The bed's much more valuable." "Then we're even, because you're much more valuable than you think you are." The words hung in the air between them. Clara felt her face heat even in the darkness. "I should let you sleep," she said, standing. "Clara." His voice stopped her at the curtain. "Thank you for waking me, for listening, for everything. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when it would have been easier." She went back to bed but didn't sleep for a long time. Her mind kept replaying his words. "You're much more valuable than you think you are." When had anyone last said something like that to her? Made her feel like she mattered beyond what she could do or provide? The answer was never. Her stepfather had seen her as a burden, and then a commodity. The men at the auction had seen her as property. Even her mother, though loving, had been too sick and worn down to do more than survive. But Levi saw her. Really saw her. And he chose her anyway. 2 weeks after the gunfight, the new barn was finished. Smaller and simpler than the old one, but solid. The fence was repaired. The garden was planted. The cabin had new curtains, and the smoke smell had mostly faded. Tom Miller brought his pregnant wife Emily to see the progress. Emily was small and round with child, glowing with that particular happiness expectant mothers had. She brought cookies and exclaimed over everything. "You've done wonders," she said, taking Clara's arm like they were old friends. "And Clara? I must say you're the talk of the town. The girl who shot Garrett Slade? It's terribly romantic." It wasn't romantic, it was terrifying. Of course it was. But that's what makes it brave. Emily squeezed her arm. "I'm glad you're here. This place needs more women with backbone." After they left, Clara found Levi checking the new barn's roof. "Emily called me brave," she said. "You are brave." "I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm barely holding it together most days." Levi climbed down from the ladder. "That's what brave looks like. Holding it together when everything's falling apart. Choosing to keep going when giving up would be easier." "Is that what you've been doing since Margaret died?" "Every day." He set down his hammer. "Some days are better than others, but each morning I make the choice to try. And lately?" He stopped, seeming to wrestle with something. "Lately it's been easier. Having you here, it reminds me what it's like to have someone to talk to laugh with, to build something with." Clara's heart was hammering. "Levi, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know this is complicated. You're healing, I'm healing, and there's still Slade out there somewhere. But I wanted you to know, you being here, it matters." "It matters to me too," Clara whispered. They stood in the shadow of the new barn, two broken people learning how to be whole again. The prairie wind swept around them, carrying the scent of sage and growing things. "We should check the fence line by the creek," Levi said, finally breaking the moment. "Thought I saw a weak spot yesterday." They walked together through the tall grass, checking wire and posts, working in the comfortable silence they'd developed. But something had shifted between them. An acknowledgement of connection that went deeper than convenience or obligation. That night, Clara woke to the sound of riders. Her blood went cold. She was out of bed and reaching for the pistol before she fully woke. Levi was already at the window, rifle ready. 3 riders, coming slow. Slade? "Can't tell yet." He tensed. "Wait, it's the sheriff." They opened the door to find Sheriff Morrison and 2 deputies. Morrison looked grim. "Got news," he said. "Slade's men were spotted heading back this way. Figure they'll make a move soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But they're coming." Clara felt the fear return, cold and sharp. 2 weeks of peace, of healing, of learning to live instead of just survive. And now this. "How many?" Levi asked. 5, maybe 6. Not as many as before, but still dangerous. Morrison looked between them. "I can post a deputy here if you want. Keep watch." "No, we'll manage." Levi's jaw was set. "But I appreciate the warning." After the sheriff left, Levi methodically checked every window, every lock, every approach to the cabin. Clara watched him work, saw the soldier in him emerge, the man who'd survived bar fights and arrows, and a dozen other near misses. "We should send for help," she said. "Tom and the others would come." "Not risking anyone else's life. Not again. Thomas Henderson died because of me." "He died because of Slade," Clara interrupted fiercely. "Stop taking responsibility for other people's evil." "Clara, no. Listen to me." She grabbed his good arm, forcing him to look at her. "You did what was right. What any decent person should have done. The consequences are on Slade, not you. And if you keep carrying guilt for every bad thing that happens, you'll break under the weight." He stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "When did you get so wise?" "When I watched you nearly die protecting me. When I realized life's too short to waste on guilt and fear." She let go of his arm. "We faced this together, like we faced everything else." "Together," he agreed quietly. They spent the night taking turns on watch, but no riders came. Dawn brought another day of work and worry. Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of waiting for the other shoe to drop. It came 3 days later, just as the sun was setting. Clara was gathering eggs from the coop when she heard the single gunshot. Not close, but not far either. Her blood turned to ice. She dropped the basket and ran for the cabin. Levi was already on the porch, rifle in hand, scanning the horizon. That came from the north ridge. Warning shot? Or distress signal? His jaw tightened. Either way, it's not good. They didn't have to wait long. A rider appeared, moving fast. As he got closer, Clara recognized Billy Maxon, Sarah's oldest boy. He was riding bareback, his face white with fear. "Mr. Thornton." He practically fell off the horse. "They got Ma. They took Ma and Emma." Levi caught the boy before he collapsed. "Slow down. Tell me what happened." "Mr. Slade and his men, they came to our place maybe an hour ago. Said Ma had to pay for helping you. Grabbed her and Emma right off the porch." Billy's voice cracked. "I tried to stop them, but there were too many. They said..." He choked on the words. "They said to tell you to bring the girl to the old Henderson homestead by midnight, or they'd kill them both." Clara's legs nearly gave out. This was her fault. Sarah, who'd lost her husband protecting his silence about Clara. Emma, who'd cried in Clara's arms about missing her father. Both of them taken because of her. "How many men?" Levi asked, already moving toward the barn. 5. Maybe 6. Mr. Slade's got his arm in a sling from where Miss Clara shot him." "Good." Levi saddled his horse with quick, efficient movements. "Billy, you ride to town. Get Sheriff Morrison and every man who'll come. Tell them what happened and where we're going." "But midnight, that's only 5 hours from now." "I know. Now go." Billy took off toward town. Levi checked his rifle. His pistol grabbed extra ammunition. Clara watched him arm himself like he was going to war, which she supposed he was. "I'm coming with you," she said. "Absolutely not. They want me. This is about me. I'm not hiding here while Sarah and Emma die." "Clara." "No." She grabbed the pistol from the table, the one she'd used to shoot Slade. "You said I was free to choose. This is my choice. We go together, or I go alone. Those are your options." He stared at her, and she saw him wrestle with it. The desire to protect her versus the knowledge that she was right, this was her fight too. More than that, he'd taught her to stand up, to fight back, to stop being a victim. He couldn't take that away now. "All right," he said finally, "but you stay behind me. You don't take risks. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understand?" "I understand." They rode hard toward the old Henderson homestead. The place had been abandoned for years, the house collapsing in on itself. Perfect for an ambush. Perfect for a trap. "He's going to kill us," Clara said as they rode. "Even if I surrender, he's not going to let any of us walk away." "I know. So why are we doing this?" Levi glanced at her. "Because leaving Sarah and Emma to die isn't an option. Because sometimes you have to do the right thing even when it's going to cost you everything." He paused. "Because 4 years ago, Margaret told me not to waste my life, and I'm done wasting it." They reached the homestead just as the sun touched the horizon. The old house was a skeleton against the darkening sky. Clara could see horses tied up behind it, 5 of them. Slade was waiting. Levi dismounted and helped Clara down. "Stay close. Keep your gun ready. And Clara, if something happens to me, you get Sarah and Emma out of there. Don't stop for me. Just run." "Levi, promise me." "I promise." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. They both knew she wouldn't leave him. They walked toward the house together. Clara's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. Every step felt like walking toward her own grave. But she kept moving because Sarah was in there. Emma was in there. and Clara Hayes was done being a victim. "Thornton," Slade's voice echoed from inside the house. "Punctual as always. Come on in, we've been waiting." They stepped through the broken doorway. The interior was worse than the outside, rotting floorboards, holes in the roof, debris everywhere. And in the center, tied to chairs, were Sarah and Emma, both alive but terrified. Slade stood behind them, his left arm in a sling, his right hand holding a gun to Sarah's head. 4 men flanked him, all armed. The odds were impossible. "There she is," Slade said, grinning at Clara. "The girl who cost me my reputation, shot me in front of my own men, made me look weak." "You are weak," Clara said, her voice steady, despite her terror. "Strong men don't need to hurt women and children to feel powerful." Slade's face darkened. Brave words from a whore who should have known her place. "She knows her place," Levi said. "Standing on her own 2 feet, making her own choices. That's more than you'll ever understand." "Oh, I understand plenty." Slade pressed the gun harder against Sarah's temple. "I understand that you took something from me, so now I'm taking something from you. Fair's fair." "What do you want?" Levi asked. "Same thing I wanted from the start. The girl. But now I want more." Slade's eyes glittered with malice. "I want you to watch what I do to her. I want you to live with that. Then maybe you'll understand what it feels like to be humiliated." Clara saw Levi's hand tighten on his rifle, saw the calculation in his eyes. Could he shoot fast enough to save Sarah? The math wasn't good. "Let Sarah and Emma go," Clara said. "I'll stay. Do whatever you want of me. Just let them go." "No!" Sarah screamed. Sarah. "Clara, no. Touching." Slade laughed. "But I don't think so. See, I'm not feeling particularly merciful today. You shot me. You made me run like a coward. That kind of insult requires a bigger payment." "Then take it from me," Levi said. "I'm the one who interfered. I'm the one who bid against you. Let the women go and face me man to man, unless you're too scared." Slade's face went red. "You calling me a coward, old man? I'm calling you exactly what you are. A bully who hides behind hired guns and hostages because you're too weak to face anyone alone." One of Slade's men shifted uncomfortably. Clara caught at the flash of shame, of recognition. These weren't all hardened killers. Some were just men who'd made bad choices and were realizing it too late. "I'll show you weak." Slade shoved Sarah's chair aside. It toppled Sarah, crying out as she hit the floor. "You want to face me, fine, but when I kill you, I'm still taking the girl, and I'm making her watch you die first." He stepped forward, gun raised. Levi raised his rifle. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then Emma screamed. The sound was so sudden, so piercing, that everyone's attention snapped to her. In that instant of distraction, 3 things happened at once. Sarah, still tied to the fallen chair, kicked out hard and caught one of Slade's men in the knee. He went down cursing. Levi fired his shot, catching Slade in the shoulder, the good shoulder this time, and Clara raised her pistol and shot the man closest to Emma. Then chaos erupted. Slade's remaining men opened fire. Levi grabbed Clara and pulled her behind a collapsed wall. Bullets tore through rotten wood and ancient plaster. Sarah was screaming for Emma. Emma was screaming for her mother. And somewhere in the noise, Clara heard Slade's voice, high and furious. "Kill them! Kill them all!" Levi returned fire methodically, each shot careful and aimed. Clara could hear men shouting boots on broken floorboards. She forced herself to breathe, to think. "We need to get to Sarah and Emma," she said. "I know. Cover me." He ran low and fast toward where Sarah lay tied to the chair. Clara fired her pistol toward the sound of boots, not aiming at people, but at the walls near them, forcing them back. She didn't know if she hit anyone. Didn't care. Just needed to buy Levi time. He reached Sarah and cut her bonds with his knife. "Can you run? Not without Emma?" Emma was still tied to her chair, exposed in the middle of the room. Slade had grabbed her, using her as a shield, as he retreated toward the back door. Blood soaked his shirt from both shoulders now, but his eyes were wild with rage and pain. "You want her!" he screamed. "Come get her!" He dragged Emma backward. The girl was crying, struggling against the ropes. Clara saw red, pure blinding fury. This man had killed Emma's father, had terrorized her family, had tried to buy Clara like property, and now he was using a 12-year-old child as a shield. Something broke inside Clara. Or maybe it had already been broken and was just now finding its shape. She stood up from behind cover. "Clara, get down!" Levi shouted. She ignored him, walked forward, her pistol raised. "Let her go, Slade." "Or what? You'll shoot me again." He laughed, half mad with pain and fury. "I'm already dying, girl. Both shoulders shot. I'll bleed out before morning, but I'm taking you with me." "No," Clara said calmly. "You're not." She could see it in his eyes the moment he realized she wasn't backing down. That the terrified girl from the tavern floor was gone, replaced by something harder. Something that had been forged in fire and gunfights, and the daily choice to keep living. "You think you're brave," Slade spat. "You're nothing, just a whore who got lucky." "Maybe, but I'm a whore who shot you twice, and I'm about to make it 3 times. She saw his hand move toward Emma's throat, saw the calculation: if he was dying, he'd take someone with him. And in that instant, Clara made her choice. She fired. The bullet caught Slade in the leg. He screamed and felt his grip on Emma loosening. Sarah ran forward and grabbed her daughter, pulling her away. Levi was there in a heartbeat, kicking Slade's gun away, pressing his rifle to the fallen man's chest. "It's over," Levi said. Slade laughed, blood bubbling on his lips. "Is it? How many more men like me are out there? How many more times you gonna have to shoot to keep her safe?" "As many times as it takes," Clara said, standing over him. "Because I'm not property. I'm not a prize. I'm a person. And I'll fight every day for the rest of my life to stay that way." Slade's eyes went unfocused. He tried to say something else, but only blood came out. Then he was still. The silence after was deafening. Clara stood holding her pistol, staring at the dead man who'd haunted her nightmares. She waited to feel something: guilt, regret, horror. But all she felt was tired. "Miss Clara!" Emma ran to her, throwing her arms around Clara's waist. "You saved us! You saved us!" Sarah was right behind her, pulling both of them into a fierce hug. "Thank God! Thank God you came!" Levi was checking Slade's men. 2 were dead. 3 had run when the tide turned. Clara could hear their horses disappearing into the night. The wounded man from earlier sat against the wall, holding his bleeding knee, looking more scared than dangerous. "What's your name?" Levi asked him. "Jack. Jack Cooper." The man's voice shook. "I didn't want to do this. Slade said it was just going to be a scare, said nobody would get hurt." "Thomas Henderson got hurt." Sarah said, her voice like ice. "He got killed." "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Jack was crying now. "I needed the money. I got a wife and baby. I didn't know it would go this far." Levi looked at him for a long moment, then lowered his rifle. "Sheriff will sort you out. If you're smart, you'll testify against the others. Might save your neck." Hoofbeats outside announced the arrival of Sheriff Morrison and a dozen townsmen. Billy must have ridden like the wind to get them here this fast. They flooded into the broken house, weapons ready, and stopped at the scene. "Looks like you handled it," Morrison said, surveying the bodies. "Clara handled most of it," Levi said. "Shot Slade 3 times total. Once in the hand, once in the leg, once in the shoulder." The men stared at Clara. She stared back, still holding her pistol covered in dust and probably blood. She knew how she must look: wild, dangerous. Nothing like the terrified girl from the tavern. "Well," Morrison said finally. "I'll be damned. Remind me never to make you angry, Miss Hayes." Clara felt something bubble up in her chest. Laughter. Inappropriate, hysterical laughter. She tried to hold it back, but couldn't. It came out in gasps and hiccups, releasing weeks of tension and terror. Sarah started laughing too. Then Emma. Soon all three women were holding each other, laughing and crying at the same time while the men looked on in confusion. "Women," one of the townsmen muttered, shaking his head. "Survivors," Levi corrected quietly. "They're survivors." The ride back to town was subdued. Sarah and Emma rode with Tom Miller, who'd brought his wagon. Jack Cooper was tied up in Sheriff Morrison's custody. And Clara rode with Levi, her body finally catching up to what she'd just done. "I killed a man," she said quietly. "You did. I don't feel bad about it. Should I feel bad?" Levi was quiet for a moment. "Slade made his choices. You made yours. Sometimes survival means doing hard things. Doesn't make you evil. Just makes you human. Have you ever killed anyone?" "Yes. During the Indian Wars mostly. Men trying to kill me or mine." He glanced at her. "I regret the necessity, not the survival." Clara absorbed that. Regret the necessity, not the survival. She could live with that. Town was awake and waiting when they arrived. Word had spread fast. People lined the streets watching as they rode in. Clara saw their expressions: shock, curiosity, respect. The girl who'd been auctioned like cattle had killed the man who tried to own her. The story would spread. She'd be famous or infamous or both. The thought made her tired. Doc Matthews insisted on checking everyone for injuries. Sarah had bruises from being tied up. Emma was in shock, but physically unharmed. Levi's arm wound had reopened from the fighting. He'd need fresh stitches. And Clara had a gash on her shoulder she hadn't even noticed getting. "You're lucky," Doc said as he cleaned the wound. "Half an inch deeper, and it would have hit something vital." "Seems like luck's been following me lately," Clara said. "Or stubbornness." Margaret always said stubbornness was better than luck anyway. Doc finished bandaging her shoulder. "You did good tonight, girl. Real good." Sheriff Morrison took their statements, documenting everything for the territorial court. Jack Cooper was already singing, giving up the names of the men who'd run. Morrison seemed confident they'd be caught within the week. "What happens now?" Clara asked as the first light of dawn touched the sky. "Now you go home," Morrison said. "Rest, heal, live your life. That's the best revenge against men like Slade, outliving them and being happy." Home. Clara turned the word over in her mind as she and Levi rode back to the ranch. When had the cabin become home? When had this land, this man, this life become the thing she wanted to protect? She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. Maybe it was the first morning Levi made her coffee. Maybe it was when he let her mend his shirts. Maybe it was standing together against Slade's first attack. Or maybe it was the slow accumulation of small kindnesses, of being seen and valued, of choosing each other day after day. They reached the ranch as the sun cleared the horizon. The new barn stood solid against the morning light. The garden was starting to show green shoots. The fence was repaired. Everything they'd built together with their own hands and stubborn refusal to give up. Levi helped her down from the horse. They stood there in the yard, exhausted and bloodied and alive. "Thank you," Clara said. "For everything. For buying me. For teaching me to fight. For standing beside me. Thank you for choosing to stay. For making this place feel like a home again." He touched her cheek gently, his calloused hand warm against her skin. "Margaret told me not to waste my life. I think she'd approve of how I'm spending it now. Building things, fighting off outlaws. Learning to live again. With someone who understands what it costs." His eyes held hers. "Clara, I know this is complicated. I know you're young and I'm old and there's a world of reasons why." She kissed him. Just reached up and pressed her lips to his, cutting off his words. For a moment, he was frozen with surprise. Then he kissed her back, gentle and sure, his arms coming around her carefully, like she was precious. When they pulled apart, Clara was smiling. "I'm 18, not a child. I know my own mind, and I choose this. I choose you. I choose us. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He smiled, then real and unguarded the grief that had shadowed his face for 4 years finally lifting. Then we'd better get started on making this official. Town needs a scandal that's actually happy for once. They walked into the cabin together, and Clara realized this was what freedom felt like. Not the absence of danger or hardship, but the presence of choice. The daily decision to stay, to build, to love, to fight for what mattered. Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Sarah and her children visited, often healing together. The town threw a celebration when Sheriff Morrison caught the last of Slade's men. Clara was embarrassed by the attention, but touched by the acceptance. Tom Miller's wife had her baby, a daughter, they named Clara Margaret, combining the names of 2 women who'd shown them courage. Emily asked Clara to be the godmother, and Clara cried when she said yes. Levi's arm healed fully. He and Clara worked the ranch together, building something that was theirs. Not his. Not hers. Theirs. They argued about planting schedules and laughed over burned dinners and sat on the porch at night watching the stars. 3 months after Slade's death on a warm August evening, Levi and Clara were married by the traveling preacher. Sarah stood as witness, her children surrounding them like family. Half the town came to the celebration, bringing food and good wishes and stories about Margaret that made Clara feel connected to the woman she'd never met. That night, alone in their cabin, their home, Levi showed Clara what love looked like when it was freely given and freely received. Gentle and patient and real, nothing like the violence she'd feared. Afterward, lying in the darkness with his arms around her, Clara thought about the girl she'd been on that tavern floor. Terrified and hopeless and certain her life was over. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned to shoot, to fight, to build, to choose. A woman who'd killed to protect the people she loved and would do it again without hesitation. A woman who'd found family in unlikely places and home in a man who'd seen her worth when nobody else did. "What are you thinking?" Levi asked, his voice drowsy. "That I'm grateful." "For what?" "For you paying $75. For you being stubborn enough to stand up when nobody else would. For you teaching me that freedom isn't something you're given, it's something you take and defend every single day." He kissed the top of her head. "Best $75 I ever spent." Clara smiled in the darkness. Somewhere she liked to think Margaret was smiling too, and her mother. 2 women who'd known love and loss, watching over the couple who'd found both and chosen to build something beautiful from the ashes. The prairie wind sang through the grass outside, carrying the scent of sage and growing things. The same wind that had blown across this land for centuries, indifferent to human suffering and joy. But in this small cabin, in this hard land, 2 people had found something that mattered more than gold or property or pride. They'd found each other. They'd found home. They'd found proof that even in the cruelest circumstances, mercy could still make miracles. That one act of courage could ripple outward, changing lives and building communities. That love, real love, wasn't about ownership, but about freedom, about choosing each other every single day, despite the cost. Clara Hayes Thornton fell asleep in her husband's arms, free at last, and the sleep was deep and dreamless and peaceful. Tomorrow would bring work and challenges, and the never-ending task of building a life in an unforgiving land. But tonight she was home. She was safe. She was loved. And she was free.